Jean Béliveau was more than just a superstar for the Montreal Canadiens. He was an icon whose dignity, sportsmanship, and calm dominance on the ice elevated him to near-mythic status in the hockey world. Beloved by teammates, respected by opponents, and revered by fans, Béliveau embodied the grace, poise, and class that the Canadiens franchise prided itself upon. Yet behind the accolades and trophies lay a deeply thoughtful individual shaped by a modest upbringing, an early flirtation with a career outside the NHL, and an unwavering commitment to carrying himself as both a champion and a gentleman. His journey from a small-town rink in Quebec to the summit of professional hockey is one of the great stories in the sport's history, offering insight into the making of a legend whose influence endures well beyond his playing days. Born on August 31st, 1931, in Trois-Rivières, Quebec, Jean Béliveau spent most of his childhood in Victoriaville, where he first laced up a pair of skates and discovered his passion for hockey. Quebec culture in the 1930s valued the sport as a communal pastime, a point of pride, and a unifying force for Francophone communities. The Béliveau family was neither affluent nor completely impoverished. They were comfortable enough to allow young Jean to dedicate time to the local outdoor rinks without having to juggle too many other responsibilities. Even as a boy, Béliveau exuded a certain calm, dignified presence that set him apart from more rambunctious peers. Teachers recalled his politeness, while local coaches marveled at his innate hockey sense and unselfish style. The physical gifts were evident early on. Béliveau's frame would eventually stretch to 6'3", towering for the 1950s and 1960s, and he carried his weight in a lithe, efficient manner. He had what coaches sometimes call soft hands, displaying a natural puck-handling ability that belied his imposing size. He also learned to leverage his long reach to protect the puck, a skill that would become a hallmark of his professional career. Yet, physical attributes alone could not explain the reverence he inspired. There was something about his demeanor, patient, measured, and confident, that made those who encountered him sense they were witnessing a rare blend of talent and maturity. Like many Canadian boys, Béliveau dreamed of the NHL. But in the era of the original six, roster spots were scarce, and teams retained the rights to prospects through a territorial system. The Montreal Canadiens held his rights, though he was never entirely certain he wanted to immediately jump into professional hockey. He played junior hockey in Quebec, dazzling crowds with breathtaking displays of skill, yet there was always a certain deliberation to his actions. Béliveau considered alternatives such as further schooling or even a business venture, mindful that a professional sports career was neither guaranteed nor particularly lucrative at the time. Moreover, he was aware that once he signed a professional contract, the Canadiens could essentially dictate much of his future. This sense of caution, or perhaps prudence, manifested in a surprising twist. Instead of immediately joining the Canadiens, Béliveau initially played for the Quebec Aces in the Quebec Senior Hockey League. The QSHL was considered amateur in name, though top players often received compensation that made their amateur status questionable. Béliveau was quite content there, earning a comfortable living through star-level salaries and endorsements, while enjoying the fervent adoration of local fans who embraced him as a hero. Montreal general manager Frank Selk Sr. repeatedly tried to coax him into a Canadiens jersey, but Béliveau held off, insisting that he was comfortable in Quebec City and not desperate to jump to the NHL. This unusual dynamic made headlines. A supremely gifted center who arguably could have become the face of the Canadiens was temporarily outside the league's direct grasp. The stalemate ended when Selke's patience ran out. In 1953, the Canadiens outright purchased the entire Quebec Senior Hockey League, effectively leaving Béliveau with no choice but to sign an NHL contract. Far from resentful, Béliveau seemed ready to embrace the next step. He joined Montreal for the 1953-54 season, carrying with him an almost mythical aura. Fans were eager to see if the hype around this tall, graceful center was warranted. From the moment he skated onto the Forum's ice, there was little doubt he was the real deal. He wore number 4, an unassuming digit that would soon become iconic for Montreal fans. Béliveau's first full seasons with the Canadiens coincided with the team's blossoming into a juggernaut. Under coach Toe Blake, and alongside luminaries like Maurice Rocket, Richard, Doug Harvey, Bernie Boom Boom Geoffrion and later Henri Richard, Béliveau anchored a formidable lineup that would dominate the late 1950s. The Canadiens' success hinged on fluid puck movement, positional discipline, and a commitment to artistry over brute force. Béliveau, with his elegant stride and pinpoint passing, fit seamlessly. The Forum faithful quickly recognized they were witnessing a virtuoso, someone whose skill might challenge even Rocket Richard's stardom in the city's collective heart. Early in his career, Béliveau showcased his offensive capabilities by leading the NHL in goals scored during the 1955-56 season and capturing the Art Ross Trophy for leading the league in points. He also won the Hart Trophy as the league's most valuable player that year, becoming one of the few players in NHL history to achieve such feats early in his career. Fans and sports writers often remarked on the uncanny ease with which he racked up points. He could maneuver through tight defenses not with the explosive fury of Rocket Richard, but with a gliding certainty, as if the puck were magnetically drawn to him. Yet numbers tell only part of the story. Béliveau's real impact lay in the intangible qualities that defined him as a leader. While he wasn't a loud voice in the dressing room, he never needed to shout or bellow. His example spoke volumes. He trained meticulously, showed empathy to teammates, and maintained composure even in heated contests. On the ice, he'd dart into open spaces and anticipate plays before opponents realized what was happening. If the Canadiens needed a big goal or a shift in momentum, Béliveau could create it, usually without any theatrics or brash celebrations. He preferred a simple nod and a handshake over chest-thumping or raucous displays. This self-assured style made him a model of sportsmanship, a quality that eventually led him to wear the Captaincy for the Canadiens. In 1961, at age 30, Béliveau was named team captain, succeeding the retired Doug Harvey. It was an inspired choice. Montreal's dressing room was full of veterans with strong personalities, and many believed only a leader with a calm, unifying presence could maintain harmony. Béliveau was that figure. Under his captaincy, he helped steer the Canadiens to 5 more Stanley Cup championships during the 1960s, bringing his total to 10 as a player. The staggering number of championships remains one of the greatest achievements by any NHL forward, and yet he wore those victories lightly, always crediting his teammates for their roles. Béliveau's approach to hockey was not that of a swashbuckling renegade, but rather a measured strategist. He could hold the puck the extra split second, waiting for a seam to open before delivering a perfect pass. When he decided to shoot, his release was deceptively quick, often catching goaltenders off guard. Though not as physically punishing as some other big forwards of his day, he never hesitated to use his body to shield the puck or separate an opponent from it. He rarely dropped his gloves. Fighting simply didn't match his temperament. But he was no pushover. Players who tried to intimidate him discovered that his balance and strength made him a formidable presence in the corners. Referees recognized his fairness. He seldom took cheap shots or retaliated out of anger. Instead, he relied on skill, positioning, and that near-regal composure. Off the ice, Béliveau shone just as brightly. As he became entrenched in Montreal's sporting and cultural landscape, he took on roles that went beyond hockey. He was famously involved in philanthropic endeavors, lending his name and time to charitable causes across Canada. Admirers often remarked that Béliveau spent as much energy uplifting local communities as he did on the ice. His sense of duty to fans seemed boundless. He would sign autographs graciously, engage children in conversation, and help organize fundraising events. For a city that idolized its hockey heroes, Béliveau stood out as someone truly invested in giving back. Years later, it would come as no surprise to many that Prime Minister Brian Mulroney once offered him the post of Governor-General of Canada, which Béliveau respectfully declined to focus on his family. The personal side of Béliveau's life further contributed to his aura. He married Elise Couture in 1953, and together they embodied a harmonious family life that stood in contrast to the stereotype of hard-partying professional athletes. Known for his devotion to his wife and daughter, Béliveau carefully balanced domestic responsibilities with the demands of a pro hockey career. No small feat in an age of extensive travel and physically grueling seasons. While the pressure of captaining the Canadiens was immense, he always managed to separate the game from his personal interactions. maintaining a sense of calm and courtesy no matter the external circumstances. One of the defining moments of Béliveau's career arrived in 1965 when he led the Canadiens to a Stanley Cup victory over the Chicago Blackhawks. Named the inaugural recipient of the Conn Smythe Trophy, awarded to the playoff MVP, Béliveau solidified his reputation as a clutch performer. That postseason, he scored crucial goals in high-stakes situations, demonstrating once again that he could elevate his game at precisely the right time. The sight of him carefully accepting the trophy, head slightly bowed in modest gratitude, remains etched in the memories of many Montreal fans. As the 1960s gave way to the 1970s, a new era of Canadiens talent emerged, featuring young stars like Guy Lafleur and Larry Robinson, while stalwarts such as Henri Richard and Yvon Cournoyer continued the team's tradition of excellence. Béliveau, now in his late 30s, provided a steadying influence. Though age and the punishing schedule occasionally slowed his stride, his hockey mind remained sharp. He adapted by leaning more on anticipation and precise passing. Younger teammates often said that a single shift with Béliveau on the ice was a masterclass in reading the play. Even as the league expanded from 6 to 12 teams in 1967 and then continued to grow, Béliveau's unwavering style seemed timeless. By the end of the 1970-71 season, Béliveau decided to retire. He was 39, and his body had endured nearly 2 decades of professional hockey. The news sent shockwaves through Montreal. One of hockey's greatest ambassadors was stepping away from the game. In his final year, he made sure to put on a show for the fans, topping 70 points at an age when most players had long since faded. The Canadiens embarked on another stunning Stanley Cup run, culminating in a thrilling 7-game victory over the Chicago Blackhawks in the 1971 finals. Béliveau hoisted the cup for the 10th time as a player, an astonishing total that only reinforced his legend. When he finally hung up his skates, he did so as the Canadiens' all-time leading scorer, a record later surpassed by Guy Lafleur, and more importantly, as a revered figure in the hockey world. Retirement was far from an endpoint for Jean Béliveau. Shortly after leaving the ice, he accepted an executive position with the Canadiens, acting as an ambassador for the organization. His responsibilities included public relations, community outreach, and various liaison roles between the team and its stakeholders. Béliveau excelled in these capacities, drawing on the same empathy and diplomacy he had exhibited during his playing days. Older players marveled at how seamlessly he transitioned into an off-ice role, while younger stars found him approachable and wise. Under his ambassadorship, the Canadiens continued to cultivate the culture of respect and class that Béliveau had embodied for so long. National recognition followed, as Canadians at large came to view Béliveau as more than just a sports legend. In addition to the aforementioned consideration for the post of Governor General, he received numerous honorary degrees, civic awards, and distinctions such as the Companion of the Order of Canada. All of these honors underlined that his contributions transcended hockey. He was a unifying figure in a country often divided by language, politics, and geography. In both English-speaking and French-speaking circles, Béliveau's name evoked admiration and a sense of unity. Still, he was not without private struggles. Over the years, he faced health challenges, including multiple hospitalizations. He also weathered periods of personal grief, like the passing of close friends, contemporaries, and eventually his own wife. Through it all, he bore these trials with a stoic dignity that mirrored his playing style. Publicly, he continued to promote charitable causes, lending his support to hospitals, research initiatives, and children's charities. Friends and fans who visited him in later years consistently found him gracious, if a bit more subdued with age. In 1972, Jean Béliveau was inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame, foregoing the customary 3-year waiting period. The enshrinement was a mere formality. Everyone knew he belonged among the pantheon of the sport's greats. At the induction ceremony, former teammates, opponents, and league executives commended him for not just his exceptional skills and the trophies he won, but for the way he carried himself, both as a young phenom and as a grizzled veteran. Legends like Gordie Howe and Ted Lindsay attested to his sportsmanship, recalling how Béliveau never gloated, never took a cheap shot, and never let the pressure rattle him. Many singled out his capacity to elevate those around him. Wingers who played on his line often had career years, finding themselves in prime scoring positions thanks to his vision. Opposing defensemen noted how they had to watch not just for Béliveau's shot, but also for the intuitive passes he delivered to trailing teammates. He passed away on December 2, 2014. The Canadiens organized a public viewing, allowing fans to pay their respects to the man who had been a cornerstone of the franchise's identity. Politicians from across the spectrum issued statements honoring him. The funeral, broadcast nationwide, was attended by dignitaries, former players, coaches, and countless admirers who felt they owed a part of their love for hockey to the example he had set. The tribute spoke of his on-ice feats, 10 Stanley Cups, 2 Hart trophies, the Conn Smythe, over 1,200 regular season points. But even more so, they spoke of the intangible sense of moral leadership he had provided. Many recalled his graciousness in victory and defeat, the steady handshake he offered to opponents, the gentle kindness he showed to fans in wheelchairs, and the 1,000 other quiet gestures that shaped his legend. Today, the number 4 jersey hangs in the rafters of the Bell Center, silent testimony to a legacy few can match. Beneath that retired sweater lies a deeper story of a boy from Victoriaville who, through patience, prudence, and boundless poise, ascended to hockey's greatest heights and remained humble there. Perhaps that is the real essence of Jean Béliveau, a figure who never allowed the game to become just about him, even though he was, in many respects, the best of it. If one is searching for the beating heart behind those iconic bleu, blanc, et rouge uniforms, look no further than the man they called Le Gros Bill, a legend whose gentle spirit and commanding talent define an era, and whose example will resonate as long as the sport endures.